Welcome to Poirot's Mysteries, exploring the brilliance of Hercule Poirot's detective work.
In the shadowed halls of Thornfield Grange, a scream pierces the night, and a young actress lies dead, a silver letter opener in her heart. Why did Sylvia Dale, a woman with secrets as sharp as the blade, come to this isolated estate? What deadly truth did she uncover in the dusty library, threatening to unravel the lives of a literary elite? Join Hercule Poirot, the master detective, as he weaves through a web of lies, betrayal, and hidden motives. Every clue, a torn letter, a single pearl, a muddy footprint, pulls you deeper into a mystery where no one is innocent, and the truth will shock you. Can you guess the killer before Poirot's little gray cells reveal all? Chapter 1. The Shadow of Secrets. The late autumn sun hung low over the rolling hills of Devon, casting a golden glow across the manicured lawns of Thornfield Grange. The estate, a grand Jacobean pile with ivy-clad walls and mullioned windows, stood as a monument to permanence, its very stones whispering of secrets kept through generations. On this particular afternoon, October 12th, 1927, the air was crisp and the leaves, brittle with the promise of winter, crunched underfoot as guests arrived for what was to be a weekend of refinement and repose. Yet, beneath the polished civility of the gathering, a quiet unease simmered, like the faint tremor of a tuning fork struck in a silent room. The occasion was a literary retreat, hosted by Lady Eleanor Ashburn, a widow of considerable wealth and an avid patron of the arts. Her invitation had drawn a select circle, writers, critics, and intellectuals, all eager to bask in the prestige of her hospitality. The Grange, isolated on the edge of Dartmoor, was the perfect stage for such an event. A closed world where ideas could flourish and, as it would soon prove, where darker impulses could fester unnoticed. Captain Arthur Hastings, ever the loyal chronicler of Hercule Poirot's exploits, stood at the edge of the drawing-room, his military bearing softened by the years, but still evident in his upright posture. He sipped a sherry, his eyes scanning the room with a mixture of curiosity and faint discomfort. The guests, though impeccably dressed, carried an air of guardedness, their smiles as carefully constructed as the room's ornate plasterwork. Hastings, invited as a friend of Lady Eleanor's late husband, felt out of place among the literati. Yet he could not shake the sense that something was amiss. At the center of the room stood Lady Eleanor herself, a statuesque woman in her late 40s, her auburn hair swept into an elegant chignon. Her emerald gown shimmered as she moved, greeting each guest with a warmth that seemed genuine.
Scenery. Well, it's a tonic in itself. She laughed softly, but her eyes flickered, as if searching his face for something unspoken. I'm delighted you think so. We have a splendid group this weekend, minds as sharp as they come, though, I confess, brilliance often comes with its own complications. Her words hung in the air, light but pointed, before she turned to greet another guest. Hastings's gaze drifted to the others. There was Dr. Julian Carver, a literary critic whose scathing reviews had made him both feared and respected. His thin lips curled in a perpetual half-smile, as if he knew something the others did not. Beside him stood Miss Clara Wentworth, a novelist in her 30s, her delicate features offset by a nervous habit of twisting her pearl bracelet. Mr. Lionel Gray, a poet with a penchant for dramatics, lounged by the fireplace, his dark eyes darting between guests as if composing verses about their flaws. Mrs. Beatrice Lyle, a playwright of advancing years, sat stiffly, her gloved hands clutching a fan, her expression one of barely concealed disdain. And then there was Mr. Victor Marwood, a publisher with a booming laugh and a reputation for ruthlessness, who seemed to dominate every conversation he joined. The final guest, arriving late and drawing every eye, was Miss Sylvia Dale, a young actress whose beauty was matched only by her ambition. Her entrance, in a sapphire dress that clung to her form, caused a ripple of murmurs. Hastings noted the way Lady Eleanor's smile tightened, the way Dr. Carver's eyes narrowed, and the way Mr. Gray's hand paused, mid-gesture, as if caught in a moment of unguarded fascination. Dinner was announced at precisely 7 o'clock, and the party moved to the dining room, where a long mahogany table gleamed under the light of a crystal chandelier. The meal was exquisite: roast pheasant, creamed potatoes, and a claret of exceptional vintage, but the conversation was strained, punctuated by awkward silences. Hastings, seated beside Miss Wentworth, attempted to draw her out, but her responses were curt, her attention fixed on Lady Eleanor at the head of the table. "You seem distracted, Miss Wentworth," Hastings ventured, his tone gentle. "Is something troubling you?" She started, her bracelet twisting faster. "Oh, no, Captain. It's only this place. It's so grand, yet it feels watchful, don't you think?" Her eyes darted to the portraits lining the walls, their painted gazes stern and unyielding. Hastings followed her glance, noting the heavy atmosphere of the room. The portraits, ancestors of the Ashbourne family, seemed to loom over the table, their eyes following the guests as if privy to their secrets. He dismissed the thought as fanciful, but could not shake the chill that settled.
Remarked on Miss Wentworth's latest novel, calling it a trifle sentimental for my taste. Miss Wentworth flushed, her retort sharp but unsteady. Mr. Gray, perhaps emboldened by the wine, launched into a tirade about the commercialization of poetry, his words aimed squarely at Mr. Marwood, who laughed heartily and deflected with a toast to artistic freedom. Lady Eleanor, ever the gracious hostess, steered the conversation to safer waters, but the tension lingered. Hastings, observing quietly, noted the small details. The way Mrs. Lyle's fan snapped shut when Miss Dale spoke. The way Mr. Marwood's hand lingered too long on Lady Eleanor's arm. The way Miss Dale's laughter seemed calculated to charm. Each gesture, each glance, seemed to carry a weight beyond its surface. As the clock struck 10, the party began to disperse, some retiring to the library for brandy, others to their rooms. Hastings lingered in the hall, intending to write a letter to his wife, when he heard a soft cry from the direction of the conservatory. He paused, his soldier's instincts sharpening. The sound was brief, almost swallowed by the creak of the old house, but it was unmistakably human, a cry of distress, or perhaps fear. He moved toward the conservatory, its glass walls glinting in the moonlight. The door was ajar, and as he stepped inside, the scent of damp earth and exotic blooms enveloped him. The room was dark, save for a single lantern casting shadows across the ferns and orchids. There, slumped against a wrought-iron bench, was Miss Sylvia Dale, her sapphire dress stained dark at the chest, her eyes wide and unseeing. A silver letter opener, its handle intricately carved, protruded from her heart. Hastings froze, his breath catching. He knelt beside her, checking for a pulse, but her wrist was cold, her beauty now a tragic mask. The conservatory, so serene moments ago, seemed to close in around him, its shadows whispering of secrets too dark to name. He stood, his mind racing. The house was silent, the guests scattered, yet the air thrummed with the certainty of a crime. And in that moment, Hastings knew there was only one man who could unravel the truth hidden within Thornfield Grange's walls: Hercule Poirot. Chapter 2. The Crime. The conservatory of Thornfield Grange, bathed in the ghostly glow of moonlight, seemed to hold its breath as Captain Arthur Hastings stood over the lifeless form of Miss Sylvia Dale. The silver letter opener, its blade buried in her chest, gleamed with a cruel indifference, catching the lantern's faint light. Her sapphire dress, once a symbol of her radiant charm, was now marred by a dark, spreading stain, and her delicate hand, the scene, his mind already cataloguing details as Poirot had taught him. The conservatory's glass walls were intact, no signs of forced entry. The door to the main house, through which he had entered, was ajar, suggesting the killer had come from within. The letter opener, ornate and heavy, was not the sort of weapon one carried casually. It belonged to the house, perhaps from the library or Lady Eleanor's writing desk, and the cry he had heard, so brief and sharp, must have been Miss Dale's last. Hastings's first instinct was to call for help, but he hesitated. The guests, scattered to their rooms or the library, would soon descend into panic, and crucial evidence might be lost in the chaos. Instead, he moved swiftly to the hall, where a telephone stood on a polished oak table. He dialed the local police, his voice steady as he reported the crime, then returned to the conservatory to stand guard, his eyes scanning the shadows for any clue he might have missed. Within 20 minutes, the crunch of gravel announced the arrival of Inspector Harold Grayson, a stocky man with a ruddy complexion and a no-nonsense air. Accompanied by 2 constables and a doctor, he strode into the conservatory, his boots echoing on the stone floor. "Captain Hastings," he said, recognizing him from a past encounter. "A grim business, this. You found her, you say?" "Yes, Inspector," Hastings replied, recounting the events with military precision. The cry at 10 o'clock, his discovery of the body, the untouched state of the scene. Grayson nodded, his eyes narrowing as he examined Miss Dale's body. The doctor, a wiry man named Dr. Phillips, confirmed death by a single stab wound to the heart, likely instantaneous. "No struggle, by the look of it," Phillips muttered. "She didn't see it coming, or didn't expect it from whoever did it." Grayson turned to Hastings. "You're a friend of that Belgian detective, aren't you? Poirot, is it? Any chance he's about?" Hastings hesitated. Poirot had not been invited to the retreat, but he was staying at a nearby inn, having expressed a desire to explore Dartmoor's charming desolation. Hastings had mentioned the weekend to him in passing, and Poirot, ever curious, had promised to be nearby should anything intriguing arise. "He's not far," Hastings admitted. "I can send for him." "Do it," Grayson said gruffly. "This lot, writers and the like, aren't my usual sort. Too many words, not enough sense. Your man might see something we don't." Hastings dispatched a constable to the village inn, then turned his attention to the guests, who had been roused by the commotion and gathered in the drawing-room. Lady Eleanor, her face pale but composed, stood by the fireplace, her hands clasped tightly. Dr. Julian Carver sat stiffly, his half-smile replaced by a grim line. Muttering to himself, while Mrs. Beatrice Lyle clutched her fan, her lips pressed thin. Mr. Victor Marwood, his usual joviality subdued, stood near the window, staring into the dark. "Miss Dale has been murdered," Hastings announced, his voice steady, despite the weight of the words. A gasp rippled through the room, followed by a cacophony of protests and questions. Lady Eleanor raised a hand for silence. "This is dreadful," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "But we must remain calm." "The police are here, and we will cooperate fully," Grayson began his questioning, blunt and methodical, asking each guest where they had been at 10 o'clock. Lady Eleanor claimed to have been in her study, writing letters. Dr. Carver said he was in the library, reading. Miss Wentworth had retired to her room, feeling unwell. Mr. Gray insisted he was walking the grounds, seeking inspiration. Mrs. Lyle had been in her room preparing for bed. Mr. Marwood said he was in the billiard room, practicing shots alone. Each alibi was plausible, yet Hastings noted the subtle tells. Miss Wentworth's trembling hands, Mr. Gray's overly theatrical gestures, Mrs. Lyle's refusal to meet anyone's eyes. As Grayson pressed for details, a soft cough interrupted the room. Hercule Poirot stood in the doorway, his small, neat figure immaculate in a tailored suit, his mustache gleaming under the chandelier's light. His green eyes, sharp and inquisitive, swept the room, taking in every detail. "Mon ami Hastings," he said, his voice calm and precise, "you have a talent for finding trouble, n'est-ce pas?" "Poirot!" Hastings exclaimed, relief flooding him. "Thank heavens you're here!" Poirot inclined his head to Inspector Grayson, who looked both annoyed and relieved. "Monsieur l'Inspecteur, I am at your service. A murder, you say, in this charming conservatory? Most intriguing." He stepped forward, his movements deliberate, and surveyed the guests. "I see a gathering of minds, yet one among you has committed a crime most foul. Rest assured, Hercule Poirot will uncover the truth, using the little grey cells." He turned to the conservatory, where the body still lay, and began his examination. He noted the letter opener, its handle engraved with the Ashbourne crest. He observed the position of the body, the absence of defensive wounds, the untouched plants around her. "She knew her killer," Poirot murmured to Hastings. "The blow was precise, intimate, no hesitation." He knelt beside the body, his gloved fingers hovering over a small object half hidden beneath Miss Dale's skirt. A single pearl. The watchful eye of Inspector Grayson. As the guests murmured, Poirot drew Hastings aside. "Hastings, my friend, observe them closely. The eyes, the hands, the silences, they betray more than words. This crime, it is not random, it is personal, rooted in passion or betrayal. We shall see." The night stretched on, the air heavy with suspicion. Thornfield Grange, once a haven of refinement, had become a stage for murder. And Poirot, with his methodical calm, was ready to peel back its secrets, one by one. Chapter 3. The Arrival. The drawing-room of Thornfield Grange, bathed in the flickering glow of the chandelier, seemed to contract under the weight of unspoken fears. The guests, their faces a gallery of strained politeness and veiled suspicion, sat in uneasy silence as Hercule Poirot stood before them, his small, immaculate figure commanding the room with quiet authority. Captain Arthur Hastings, positioned near the doorway, watched his friend with a familiar mix of admiration and anticipation. Poirot's arrival, though unexpected by the others, was to Hastings a beacon of hope in the shadow of Miss Sylvia Dale's murder. Poirot's green eyes, sharp as cut glass, moved from face to face, lingering just long enough to unsettle each guest. His moustache twitched slightly, a sign Hastings recognized as the detective's mind already at work, piecing together the invisible threads of motive and opportunity. "Mesdames et messieurs," Poirot began, his voice soft yet resonant, "a tragedy has occurred within these walls, and it is my duty, nay, my purpose, to uncover the truth. A young woman, vibrant and full of promise, lies dead. The hand that struck her is among us, and it is with method and order that we shall find it." Inspector Grayson, standing by the fireplace, cleared his throat. "Mr. Poirot, I appreciate your reputation, but this is a police matter. We've got the scene secured, and I'll be conducting the investigation." Poirot inclined his head. a gesture of deference that Hastings knew masked a steely resolve. "Naturellement, Inspector. I am but a humble consultant, here to assist. Yet, permit me to observe that murder. It is not merely a matter of evidence, but of the human heart. The clues, they are in the words, the glances, the silences. I propose to begin with a simple request, that each of you recount your movements this evening, with precision." Grayson grunted, clearly torn between irritation and curiosity, but nodded. "Fair enough. Let's have it then." One at a time, Poirot turned first to Lady Eleanor Ashburn, whose composure had not wavered despite the pallor of her cheeks. "Madame, if you please, where were you at 10 o'clock, when the cry was heard?"
Lady noted the slight tremor in her fingers as she adjusted a ring on her hand. Poirot's eyes narrowed imperceptibly. "And you were alone, madame?"
"Yes," she replied, meeting his gaze. "Quite alone."
Poirot nodded, moving to Doctor Julian Carver, whose thin lips curled into a faint, sardonic smile. "Monsieur Carver, your whereabouts?" "In the library," Carver said, his tone clipped. "I was reviewing a manuscript, a dreadful one, I might add. I heard no cry, no disturbance. The library is at the far end of the house, you see." Poirot's head tilted. "A manuscript, you say? And you were undisturbed? No visitors, no sounds?" "None," Carver said firmly, though his fingers tapped lightly on the arm of his chair, a rhythm Hastings found oddly deliberate. Miss Clara Wentworth was next, her voice barely above a whisper. "I was in my room, feeling unwell. I had a headache and retired early. I heard nothing until the commotion began." Her pearl bracelet twisted furiously in her hands, and Hastings noted a faint redness around her wrist, as if the pearls had bitten into her skin. Mr. Lionel Gray, the poet, spoke with theatrical flourish. "I was walking the grounds, seeking the muse in the moonlight. The night was alive with whispers, but none, alas, of murder." His eyes darted to Lady Eleanor, a fleeting glance that Poirot did not miss. Mrs. Beatrice Lyle, her fan snapping open and shut, claimed to have been in her room, preparing for bed and reflecting on the evening's tedious conversation. Her tone dripped with disdain, and Hastings wondered at the venom in her words. Mr. Victor Marwood, the publisher, was the last. "Billiard room," he said with a forced chuckle. "Playing a solo game, working on my angles. Didn't hear a thing until the shouting started." His joviality seemed strained, his eyes avoiding the others. Poirot listened to each account with the patience of a watchmaker, his expression unreadable. When the last guest had spoken, he clasped his hands behind his back and paced slowly before the fireplace. "Bon. We have a picture, incomplete but revealing. A cry at 10 o'clock, heard only by Captain Hastings, who discovers the body of Mademoiselle Dale. A letter opener belonging to this house is the weapon. And each of you, it seems, was alone, insulated from the tragedy. Yet one of you is not truthful." A murmur of protest rose, but Poirot raised a hand. "Silence, s'il vous plaît. The truth, it hides in the details. I shall examine the conservatory once more, and then we shall speak again. Inspector, may I have your permission?" Grayson, clearly out of his depth among this circle of intellectuals, nodded grudgingly. "Go ahead, but don't touch anything." Poirot, with Hastings trailing, returned to the conservatory. The body had been covered with a sheet, opener's handle. "Observe, Hastings," he said softly. "The blade is driven deep with force, yet the angle suggests a strike from someone of similar height to Mademoiselle Dale. No struggle, no disarray. She trusted her killer, or was taken by surprise." He moved to the glass walls, inspecting the frames. No windows opened, no doors forced. The killer came from within the house, as I suspected. His eyes fell to the floor, where a faint smudge of mud marked the stone. "And this," he said, pointing, is not from the constable's boots. It is older, drier. Someone walked here earlier, perhaps tonight. Hastings frowned. But the grounds were wet from yesterday's rain. Couldn't it be from anyone? Poirot's mustache twitched. Précisément, Hastings. Anyone who walked the grounds, as Monsieur Gray claims to have done. Yet his shoes, when I observed him, were clean. Curious, no? Before Hastings could respond, Poirot's attention shifted to a small table near the bench, where a glass of water stood, half empty. This, he said, was not here when you found the body, was it? Hastings shook his head. No, I don't think so. I was focused on Miss Dale, but no, I'm certain it wasn't. Poirot's eyes gleamed. A detail, Hastings, but a vital one. Someone has been careless, or perhaps bold. He slipped the glass into a handkerchief, tucking it away. We return to the drawing room. The game, it has begun. As they re-entered the drawing room, the guests' eyes turned to Poirot, some with fear, others with defiance. Hastings felt the weight of the moment, the sense that beneath the polished surface of Thornfield Grange, a web of lies was beginning to unravel. Poirot, calm and relentless, was already tightening the threads. Chapter 4. The Questions Begin. The drawing-room of Thornfield Grange, with its heavy velvet curtains and flickering firelight, seemed to close in around the assembled guests as Hercule Poirot began his methodical interrogation. The air was thick with tension, each guest's posture betraying a mix of unease and defiance. Captain Arthur Hastings, standing near the door, watched his friend with a growing sense of awe. Poirot's small, neat figure moved with the precision of a conductor, orchestrating the room's emotions as he sought the truth behind Miss Sylvia Dale's murder. Poirot stood before the fireplace, his hands clasped behind his back, his green eyes scanning the faces before him. Mesdames et messieurs, he said, his voice calm yet piercing.
Eleanor Ashburn, whose regal composure seemed to falter under his gaze. Madame, you were in your study at 10 o'clock, writing letters. Tell me, what letters were these, and to whom? Lady Eleanor's fingers tightened around her ring, a sapphire that caught the firelight. Personal correspondence, she said, her voice steady but cool, to my solicitor in London, regarding estate matters, and to a friend in Bath. I often write in the evenings. It calms me. Poirot's head tilted slightly. And these letters, they are still in your study? May I see them? Her eyes flickered, but she nodded. Of course. They are on my desk, unsealed. Poirot made a mental note, then turned to Dr. Julian Carver, whose sardonic half-smile had returned. Monsieur Carver, you were in the library, reading a manuscript. What was its title, and why did it hold your attention so late? Carver's smile tightened. It was an unpublished novel by a young writer. Dreadful stuff, sentimental tripe. I was making notes for a review. As for the title, I believe it was The Heart's Lament. Hardly memorable. And you heard nothing? No cry, no footsteps? Poirot pressed. Nothing, Carver said, his fingers resuming their rhythmic tap on the chair. The library is quite isolated. Poirot's gaze lingered, then moved to Miss Clara Wentworth, whose nervous twisting of her pearl bracelet had left red marks on her wrist. Mademoiselle, you were unwell in your room. Did you take anything for this headache? Perhaps a glass of water? Miss Wentworth started, her eyes wide. No, I just lay down. I didn't want to be disturbed. Poirot's moustache twitched. Curious, mademoiselle. A glass of water was found in the conservatory, near the body. You are certain you took nothing? Her face paled, and she shook her head vigorously.
I didn't go near the conservatory. I swear it." Mr. Lionel Gray, the poet, was next, his voice rising with theatrical flair. "I told you, I was on the grounds, walking under the stars. The muse calls at odd hours, you know." He gestured dramatically, but his eyes darted to Lady Eleanor again, a fleeting look of something, fear, perhaps, or guilt. "And your shoes, Monsieur Gray," Poirot said softly. "They were clean when I observed you. Yet the grounds were wet, and there is mud in the conservatory. How do you explain this?" Gray's bravado faltered. I must have cleaned them before returning. A poet's vanity, you understand." Mrs. Beatrice Lyle, her fan snapping shut, spoke with icy precision. "I was in my room, as I said. I heard nothing, saw nothing. This whole affair is sordid, and I wish to be done with it." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Madame, your fan, it is most distinctive. Ivory with a silver clasp. Was it with you all evening?"
When his turn came. "Billiard room, as I said. Just me and the table. I'm not much for company after dinner." "And you heard no cry?" Poirot asked. "The billiard room is not so far from the conservatory." Marwood's jovial mask slipped. "Not a sound." I was focused on my game. Poirot paced slowly, his hands still clasped behind him. "Bon, we have a chorus of alibis, each neatly sung. Yet one note is false. The glass of water, the mud, the letter opener. These are not mere objects but pieces of a puzzle. I ask you now to remain in this room, under the inspector's watch, while I examine further." He gestured to Hastings, who followed him to Lady Eleanor's study, a small, elegant room lined with books and lit by a single lamp. On the desk lay 2 letters, as she had claimed, but Poirot's keen eyes spotted something else. A faint ink smudge on the blotter, not from the letters, but from a different pen, its nib slightly bent. "Interesting," Poirot murmured. "Madame writes with a fountain pen, yet this smudge suggests a quill. Someone else has used this desk." They returned to the conservatory, where Poirot examined the glass of water again, holding it to the light. A faint residue clung to the rim, barely visible. "Hastings," he said, "this glass may hold more than water. I shall have it tested. But for now, observe the pearl I found near the body." He produced the small envelope, showing Hastings the single pearl, its luster dulled by a speck of blood. "It is from a bracelet, perhaps, or a necklace. Miss Wentworth's bracelet is missing a pearl, did you notice?" Hastings nodded, his mind racing. "But she said she was in her room. Could she have been in the conservatory?" Poirot smiled faintly. "Possibly, mon ami. Or someone wishes us to think so. The pearl, the glass, the mud, these are breadcrumbs, but we must follow them with care." Back in the drawing room, the guests' tension had grown palpable. Miss Wentworth's hands trembled, Mr. Gray's pacing had ceased, and Mrs. Lyle's fan lay still in her lap. Poirot addressed them once more. "I have one question for all of you. Did Miss Dale speak to anyone privately this evening, after dinner?" A heavy silence followed, broken only by Lady Eleanor's quiet voice. "She asked to speak with me, but I was too busy." She seemed agitated. Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Agitated, you say? Merci, madame. That is most illuminating." As the clock struck midnight, Hastings felt the weight of Poirot's words. The questions had only begun, but already the threads of deceit were unraveling, pointing to a truth buried deep within Thornfield Grange's polished walls. Chapter 5. The Red Herrings. The atmosphere in Thornfield Grange's drawing composure fraying at the edges. Hercule Poirot, his small frame radiating quiet authority, stood before them, his green eyes glinting with the intensity of a man who saw not just people, but the intricate web of their secrets. Captain Arthur Hastings, positioned by the door, noted the subtle signs of strain.
Miss Clara Wentworth's trembling hands, Mr. Lionel Gray's restless fingers, Mrs. Beatrice Lyle's rigid posture. The murder of Miss Sylvia Dale had cast a shadow over the gathering, and Poirot was determined to pierce its darkness. Inspector Grayson, growing impatient, broke the silence. "Mr. Poirot, we've got alibis, a weapon, and a body. Seems to me the simplest explanation is the best. Someone here had a grudge, followed her to the conservatory, and stabbed her. I'm inclined to start with Mr. Marwood, his billiard room's closest to the scene." Mr. Victor Marwood's face reddened, his jovial mask slipping. "Now, see here, Inspector. I was playing billiards, alone. I've no reason to harm Miss Dale. She was a charming girl, a real talent. Ask anyone." Poirot raised a hand, his voice calm but firm. "Patience, Monsieur Marwood. The inspector, he seeks the obvious path, but the obvious, it is often a distraction, a red herring, as you English say. Let us consider the facts, not the assumptions." Grayson bristled but held his tongue as Poirot turned to the group. "The letter opener, it is from this house, oui? Lady Eleanor, you confirmed it bears the Ashbourne crest, yet it was found in the conservatory, far from the study. How did it come to be there? And the glass of water, with its curious residue, why was it placed near the body after Captain Hastings' discovery?" Lady Eleanor's lips parted, but she said nothing, her eyes flickering to the floor. Poirot continued, his tone deceptively mild. "And then there is the pearl, torn from a bracelet or necklace found beneath Mademoiselle Dale. Miss Wentworth, your bracelet, it is missing a pearl, is it not?" Miss Wentworth gasped, her hands flying to her wrist. I didn't notice. It must have come loose. I swear I wasn't in the conservatory." Her voice cracked, and tears welled in her eyes, drawing sympathetic glances from Mr. Gray and a scowl from Mrs. Lyle. Poirot's mustache twitched. "Calm yourself, mademoiselle. A missing pearl does not make a murderer, but it raises questions. Let us explore another path. Monsieur Gray, you claim to have walked the grounds, yet your shoes were clean. The mud in the conservatory, it suggests someone who walked outside
To the conservatory. Mrs. Lyle's eyes narrowed, her fan snapping open. "I resent the implication, Mr. Poirot. My fan never left my side. You're chasing shadows." Poirot smiled faintly. "Shadows, madame, often conceal the truth. Let us turn to another shadow. Mademoiselle Dale's agitation, as noted by Lady Eleanor. Who did she speak with after dinner? Who might have provoked such a state?" The room fell silent, the guests exchanging wary glances. Dr. Julian Carver, his half-smile gone, spoke up. "She was an actress, Mr. Poirot. They're prone to dramatics. Perhaps she was upset over a review or a role. I saw her speaking with Marwood after dinner. Looked like a heated exchange." Marwood shot to his feet. "That's a lie. We talked business, nothing more. She wanted a part in a play I'm backing. I told her it wasn't guaranteed. She was disappointed, not agitated." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Business, Monsieur Marwood, or something more personal? Mademoiselle Dale was a woman of charm, oui? Such charm often stirs the heart." Marwood's face flushed deeper, but he sat down, muttering, "It was just business." Grayson seized the moment.
Sounds like motive to me. A spurned advance, a quarrel, and a handy letter opener. Marwood, I'm taking you in for questioning. Poirot raised a hand. Un moment, Inspector. Monsieur Marwood may be a red herring, but let us not be hasty. The evidence, it points in many directions. The glass, the pearl, the mud, these are not accidents. Someone wishes to mislead us, to make us see what is not there. He turned to Hastings, his voice low. Mon ami, fetch the glass from the conservatory. I wish to examine it again, and I trust you to handle it with care. Hastings nodded, retrieving the glass, still wrapped in Poirot's handkerchief. Poirot held it to the light, noting the faint residue. This residue, it is not mere water. I suspect a sedative, perhaps chloral hydrate. If Mademoiselle Dale was drugged, it explains the lack of struggle. The killer planned this act with care. Grayson frowned. Drugged? That's a stretch, Poirot. We'll need a lab to confirm that. Precisement, Poirot said. But the mind, it does not wait for the laboratory. The glass was placed after the murder, perhaps to suggest Mademoiselle Wentworth.
Where is this letter now?
It was not found on her body. No one answered, but Hastings noted Mrs. Lyle's fan pause mid-motion, a fleeting stillness that spoke volumes. Poirot, too, seemed to notice, but he said nothing, instead addressing the group. We shall adjourn for now. Inspector, please ensure no one leaves the Grange. Tomorrow, I shall continue my inquiries. The truth, it is like a mosaic. Each piece must be placed with care. As the guests dispersed under Grayson's stern gaze, Poirot drew Hastings aside. Hastings, the red herrings multiply, but they cannot hide the truth forever. The letter, the glass, the pearl, these are not random. Someone weaves a net of deception, but Hercule Poirot, he shall unravel it. Hastings nodded, feeling the weight of the night. The Grange, once a haven of elegance, was now a labyrinth of lies, and only Poirot's little gray cells could find the way out. Chapter 6. A clue in detail. The dawn broke over Thornfield Grange with a pale, reluctant light, as if the sun itself hesitated to illuminate the secrets lurking within its walls. The guests, confined to their rooms under Inspector Grayson's orders, had passed a restless night, their sleep fractured by the specter of Miss Sylvia Dale's murder. Captain Arthur Hastings, roused early by a knock from a constable, found himself in the dining room, where a somber breakfast was laid out. The air was heavy with the scent of coffee and toast, but no one touched the food. Hercule Poirot, impeccably dressed despite the early hour, sat at the head of the table, his green eyes bright with purpose. Bon matin, Hastings, Poirot said, sipping his tisane with delicate precision. The night, it has given us time to reflect, but the day, it demands action. We must find the thread that unravels this mystery. Hastings nodded, his mind still on the previous night's interrogations. You suspect the glass of water, don't you? That residue, it could prove someone drugged Miss Dale. Poirot's mustache twitched. Précisément, mon ami. But it is not the glass alone that holds my attention. There is a detail, small but significant, that whispers of the truth. Come, we shall return to the conservatory. The two men made their way to the glass-walled room, where the morning light revealed details hidden in the previous night's shadows. The body of Miss Sylvia Dale had been removed, but the scene remained cordoned off, the silver letter-opener now in police custody. Poirot knelt by the wrought-iron bench, his gloved fingers tracing the stone floor, where the faint smudge of mud had been found. This mud, he murmured, it is not ordinary.
Observe its color, reddish, with a fine texture. It is not from the lawn, which is dark and loamy. No, this comes from the rose garden, where the soil is clay,"
said, his eyes gleaming. "And yet, the mud tells a different story. Let us visit this garden." They stepped outside, the crisp October air biting at their faces. The rose garden, a secluded corner of the estate, was a riot of late blooms, their petals heavy with dew. Poirot examined the path, noting a patch of disturbed clay near a trellis. "Here," he said, pointing to a faint footprint, barely discernible. "Someone stood here, perhaps watching the house. The print is small, delicate, perhaps a woman's shoe, or a man with small feet." Hastings peered at the print, his mind racing. Could it be Miss Wentworth? Her bracelet pearl was found near the body. Poirot shook his head. "Patience, Hastings. The pearl. It is too convenient, too obvious, a clue placed to mislead. But this footprint, it is subtle, overlooked. It speaks of someone who moved with purpose." Returning to the house, Poirot requested a private interview with each guest, beginning with Miss Clara Wentworth. They met in the library, a cavernous room lined with leather-bound volumes. Miss Wentworth, pale and trembling, clutched her bracelet, now visibly missing a pearl. "Mademoiselle," Poirot began, his voice gentle but probing, "you say you were in your room, unwell. Yet your bracelet, it is lost a pearl, found near the body, and your wrist, it is marked, as if the bracelet was torn." Her eyes widened, tears spilling over. "I didn't do it, Mr. Poirot. I don't know how the pearl got there. I noticed it was missing this morning. Someone must have taken it." Poirot leaned forward. "And last night, after dinner, did you see Mademoiselle Dale with a letter, as Monsieur Gray described?" Miss Wentworth hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, I saw her in the hall. She was reading something, a folded paper. She looked frightened. When she saw me, she tucked it into her sleeve and hurried away." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Into her sleeve, you say? Merci, mademoiselle. That is most helpful." Next, Poirot spoke with Mr. Lionel Gray, whose theatrical demeanor had dulled under the weight of suspicion. "Monsieur Gray," Poirot said, "you walked the grounds, yet your shoes were clean. The mud in the conservatory, it comes from the rose garden. Were you there?" Gray's hands clenched. "I told you, I cleaned my shoes. I may have passed through the rose garden, but I didn't go into the conservatory. I swear it." Poirot's gaze was unrelenting. "And the letter Mademoiselle Dale held, did you see it? Or perhaps you spoke with her alone?" Gray's eyes darted away. I tried to speak with her after dinner. She brushed me off, said she had no time for poets. She was clutching something, yes, but I didn't see what." Dale's room, which had been searched by the police, but yielded little. Poirot, however, examined the wardrobe, his fingers pausing over a sapphire dress, not the one she wore, but an identical spare. In its pocket, he found a scrap of paper, torn and crumpled, with a single word scrawled in haste. "Betrayed." The ink matched the quill smudge from Lady Eleanor's desk. "Hastings," Poirot said, his voice low, "this is no coincidence. The letter, it was written here, perhaps by Mademoiselle Dale herself. It speaks of betrayal, and it was hidden, then torn. Someone feared its contents." Hastings's mind raced. But who? Lady Eleanor? She was in the study where the quill was used. Poirot smiled faintly. "Perhaps, mon ami. Or perhaps the quill points to another. We must test the glass for the sedative, and we must find the rest of this letter. For now, observe the guests. The one who betrayed Mademoiselle Dale, they will betray themselves." As they returned to the drawing room, where the guests awaited under Grayson's stern gaze, Hastings felt the weight of Poirot's words. The clue, the torn paper, the word betrayed, was a beacon in the fog of deception.
But the killer, still hidden among the polished facades of Thornfield Grange, was growing desperate, and Poirot's little gray cells were closing in. Chapter 7. More Lies Surface. The morning light filtering through the tall windows of Thornfield Grange did little to dispel the oppressive atmosphere that had settled over the estate. The guests, gathered once more in the drawing-room, wore their exhaustion like a second skin, their eyes darting nervously as Hercule Poirot entered, his neat figure a stark contrast to the disheveled emotions around him. Captain Arthur Hastings, standing by the window, felt the weight of the previous night's discoveries. The torn paper with the word betrayed, the quill smudge, the pearl, the mud. Each clue was a piece of the puzzle, but the picture remained elusive, and Poirot's calm intensity suggested he was closing in on the truth. Poirot stood before the group, his hands clasped, his green eyes sweeping over the assembly. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice precise and deliberate, "the death of Mademoiselle Sylvia Dale is no simple crime of passion. It is a tapestry woven with lies, and today we shall pull at the threads. Secrets, affairs, feuds, financial motives, they hide among you, and I, Hercule Poirot, will uncover them." Inspector Grayson, pacing near the fireplace, snorted. "Get to it then, Poirot. We've got a killer to catch, and all this talk of tapestries isn't helping." Poirot's mustache twitched, but he ignored the interruption. "Let us begin with a new detail, a letter, or part of one, found in Mademoiselle Dale's spare dress. A single word, betrayed, written in haste, with..."
Silence fell, broken only by the crackle of the fire. Lady Eleanor's face paled, her hands tightening on her sapphire ring. "I know nothing of any letter," she said, her voice steady but strained. "My study is open to guests. Anyone could have used the quill." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Indeed, madame, but the word betrayed suggests a personal grievance. Mademoiselle Dale was agitated, perhaps frightened. Who betrayed her trust? Dr. Julian Carver, his usual half-smile absent, leaned forward. "You're fishing, Poirot. Sylvia was an actress, dramatic by nature. That word could mean anything. A lover's quarrel, a professional slight. You're building castles in the air." Poirot turned to him, his gaze piercing. "Monsieur Carver, your reviews are known for their sharpness. Did you perhaps critique Mademoiselle Dale's talents too harshly? Or was there a more personal connection?" Carver's jaw tightened. "I barely knew her. My reviews are professional, not personal. If she took offense, that's her affair." Poirot shifted his attention to Mr. Victor Marwood, whose jovial demeanor had all but vanished. "Monsieur Marwood, you spoke with Mademoiselle Dale about a play. She was disappointed, you said. But was there more? A promise broken, perhaps? A betrayal?" Marwood's hands clenched. "I told you it was business." "She wanted a lead role in a West End production I'm financing. I said I'd consider it, but there were others in the running. She didn't like that. But it's hardly a motive for murder." Poirot's head tilted. "And yet, monsieur, your conversation was heated, as Monsieur Carver observed. What did she say to provoke such passion?" Marwood hesitated, his eyes flickering to Lady Eleanor. She implied she had information that could ruin me. Said she'd go to the papers if I didn't give her the role. I laughed it off. She was bluffing." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Information, you say? Most interesting. And what might this information be?" Marwood's face reddened. "I don't know. She didn't say, and I didn't ask. It was nonsense, I tell you." Before Poirot could press further, Miss Clara Wentworth burst into tears, her voice trembling. "It's not nonsense. Sylvia knew things, secrets about all of us. She told me after dinner that she'd found something in the library, a system, study,
A letter, perhaps, or a diary. She was scared, said it could destroy someone. I didn't know what to make of it, but I told her to be careful. Poirot's gaze sharpened, fixing on Miss Wentworth. Mademoiselle, you spoke with her in the hall, oui? And this secret, it was written down,
Snapped shut with a sharp crack.
"This is absurd," she said, her voice icy. Sylvia was a manipulative girl, stirring trouble for attention.
If there was a letter, it's probably some melodramatic fiction. Poirot turned to her, his tone deceptively mild. "Madame Lyle, you seem quick to dismiss her. Yet your fan, it was seen in the hall near the conservatory last night by a maid. You said it never left your side." Mrs. Lyle's eyes flashed. "The maid is mistaken. I was in my room, as I told you." Poirot nodded, as if satisfied, but Hastings saw the glint in his eyes. He moved to Mr. Lionel Gray, whose pacing had resumed, his hands twisting nervously. "Monsieur Gray, you sought to speak with Mademoiselle Dale. Did she mention this secret to you? Or perhaps you knew it already?" Gray's face paled. "I told you, she brushed me off. I don't know what she was hiding, but she was cruel, teasing me with her smiles, then laughing at my poetry. If she had a secret, it wasn't mine." Poirot stepped back, addressing the group. "A secret, dangerous enough to kill for. A letter, hidden and torn. A glass with a sedative, a pearl, a footprint in the rose garden. These are not random. They point to a motive, a betrayal. Someone here feared exposure, and they acted with precision." He paused, letting the silence stretch. Hastings felt the tension coil tighter, the guests' faces betraying their secrets. Marwood's flushed anger, Carver's cold detachment, Wentworth's trembling fear, Lyle's rigid defiance, Gray's nervous agitation, Lady Eleanor's guarded calm. The lies were surfacing, and Poirot was ready to seize them. "Hastings," he murmured, "the letter is the key, but it is not the only clue. We must find its other pieces, and we must watch for the one who betrays themselves with a glance or a word. The truth, it is near." As the guests were dismissed to their rooms under Grayson's stern watch, Hastings knew the net was tightening. The secrets of Thornfield Grange were rising, and Poirot's little gray cells were poised to strike. Chapter 8. The Emotional Turning Point. The late morning sun cast long shadows across the polished floors of Thornfield Grange, but its warmth did little to thaw the chill that had settled over the estate. The guests, confined to the drawing-room under Inspector Grayson's orders, sat in a strained tableau, their faces etched with exhaustion and fear. The murder of Miss Sylvia Dale hung over them like a storm cloud, and Hercule Poirot's relentless probing had stirred emotions that now threatened.
We approach a moment of truth. The lies. They have been piled high, but they cannot stand forever. A secret, dangerous and personal, drove someone to murder Mademoiselle Dale. And now, one of you will break, for the heart cannot bear the weight of guilt indefinitely. Inspector Grayson, leaning against the mantel, muttered, "Let's hope so, Poirot." "Hello," Sharon was. "I'm tired of chasing shadows. If you've got something, spit it out." Poirot's mustache twitched, but he ignored the inspector's impatience. The letter with the word betrayed. The glass with its sedative. The pearl. The footprint in the rose garden. These are not mere clues, but signposts to a motive rooted in fear and betrayal. Let us explore further. Mademoiselle Wentworth, you said Mademoiselle Dale spoke of a dangerous secret.
Did she name anyone? Miss Clara Wentworth, her face pale and her bracelet still missing its pearl, shook her head, her voice trembling. No, she didn't. She only said it was something she found in the library, something that could ruin someone. I begged her to tell me, but she wouldn't. She was afraid. Poirot nodded, his gaze shifting to Dr. Julian Carver, whose cold detachment seemed to falter under scrutiny. Monsieur Carver, you are a man of observation. Did you see Mademoiselle Dale in the library, perhaps with a letter or diary? Carver's thin lips pressed tighter. I told you I was reading a manuscript. I didn't see her after dinner. If she was poking around the library, it wasn't my concern. Poirot's eyes narrowed. And yet, monsieur, your reviews have ruined careers. Could Mademoiselle Dale have had something on you, a letter perhaps, exposing a past indiscretion? Carver's half-smile vanished. That's preposterous. I had no quarrel with her. You're grasping at straws, Poirot. Before Poirot could respond, Mrs. Beatrice Lyle's fan snapped shut with a crack that startled the room. Her voice, sharp and quivering, cut through the silence. Enough of this! Sylvia was a scheming little actress, playing games with everyone. She flirted with Marwood, taunted Gray, even tried to charm me with her false tears. If she had a secret, she deserved what she got. The room froze, every eye turning to Mrs. Lyle. Her face flushed, her gloved hands trembling as she realized the weight of her words. Lady Eleanor gasped softly, and Miss Wentworth stifled a sob. Hastings, watching closely, saw Poirot's eyes gleam with quiet triumph. Madame Lyle, Poirot said softly, your words betray a passion most revealing. You speak of Mademoiselle Dale with...
She said she'd found proof in the library, a letter I thought was long destroyed. She threatened to tell everyone unless I helped her career. Poirot leaned forward, his voice gentle but relentless. And this letter, madame, what did it contain? Tears welled in Mrs. Lyle's eyes, and she shook her head. I don't know. I burned it years ago, or thought I did. She must have found a copy, or something else. I didn't kill her, Mr. Poirot, I swear, but I wished her gone. The confession hung in the air, a crack in the wall of lies. Mr. Lionel Gray, his face ashen, spoke up, his voice unsteady. She did the same to me. After dinner, she laughed at my poetry, said she'd found a letter in the library proving I'd plagiarized my first collection. She said she'd ruin me unless I wrote a poem praising her. I didn't take her seriously, but it stung. Poirot's gaze shifted to Mr. Victor Marwood, who had gone pale. And you, Monsieur Marwood, you admitted she threatened to ruin you. Was it also about a letter? Marwood swallowed hard, his jovial mask gone. Yes, damn it. She said she had proof I'd bribed critics to boost my author's books. She found a letter in the library, one I'd written to a critic years ago. She wanted that West End role, or she'd go to the papers. I told her to go to blazes, but I didn't kill her. Poirot turned to Lady Eleanor, whose calm facade was cracking. Madame, the library is part of your home. These letters, they were found there. Do you know of them? Lady Eleanor's hands twisted her ring. I keep old correspondence in the library, family papers, some from my late husband's dealings. I didn't know Sylvia was looking through them. If she found something, it wasn't mine. Poirot stepped back, his hands clasped behind him. A pattern emerges, mes amis. Mademoiselle Dale, she was a collector of secrets found in the library. Letters that could destroy reputations, ruin lives. One of you feared her knowledge too much and silenced her. But which one? He paused, letting the question linger. Hastings, watching the guests, saw their faces, Mrs. Lyle's tear-streaked defiance,
Marwood's flushed guilt, Gray's nervous agitation, Carver's icy control, Lady Eleanor's guarded fear, Wentworth's trembling silence. The emotional dam had broken, and the truth was seeping through. "Hastings," Poirot murmured as they stepped aside. "The library. It is the heart of this mystery. We must search it, for the letters, or what remains of them, and we must watch Mrs. Lyle closely. Her confession, it is but a partial truth." As the guests were dismissed to their rooms, Grayson muttering about arrests, Hastings felt the shift in the case. The lies were crumbling, and Poirot's little gray cells were poised to seize.
Chapter 9. The Trap. The afternoon light filtered through the heavy curtains of Thornfield Grange's drawing room, casting a muted glow over the assembled guests. The air was thick with anticipation, each face etched with a mix of dread and defiance. Hercule Poirot, his small frame radiating quiet authority, stood before them, his green eyes sharp and unrelenting. Captain Arthur Hastings, positioned near the door, sensed the pivotal moment approaching. Poirot was setting a trap, and the killer, hidden among the circle of suspects, was about to feel the noose tighten. Poirot clasped his hands behind his back, his voice calm but laced with steel. "Mesdames et messieurs, we stand at a crossroads. The murder of Mademoiselle Sylvia Dale was no act of impulse, but a calculated strike, driven by fear of exposure. Letters, secrets, betrayals, these are the threads of our tapestry. And today I shall pull them taut. One of you will stumble, for the truth cannot be hidden from Hercule Poirot." Inspector Grayson, standing by the fireplace, crossed his arms. "Hope you're right, Poirot. I'm ready to make an arrest, but I need more than your theatrics." Poirot's mustache twitched, but he ignored the jab. "Let us review. Mademoiselle Dale discovered letters in the library, letters that threatened reputations. Madame Lyle, you spoke of a scandal from your past. Monsieur Marwood, a bribe to critics. Monsieur Gray, an accusation of plagiarism. Each of you had reason to fear her. But there is more. The glass with the sedative, the pearl from Mademoiselle Wentworth's bracelet, the footprint in the rose garden. These are not accidents, but pieces of a deliberate design." He turned to the group, his gaze sweeping over their faces. "I propose a simple exercise. We shall recreate the moments after dinner, when Mademoiselle Dale was last seen alive. Each of you will recount your movements, but this time I shall watch not only your words, but your hearts. The guilty, they cannot hide their fear." Lady Eleanor Ashbourne, her composure fraying, spoke first. "I've told you, I was in my study, writing letters. I saw no one, heard nothing, until Captain Hastings raised the alarm." Poirot nodded, his eyes lingering on her sapphire ring, which she twisted nervously. "And yet, madame, the quill in your study was used to write the word betrayed. Did you write it, or did another use your desk?" Her eyes widened. I don't know. Anyone could have entered the study." Poirot moved to Dr. Julian Carver, whose cold demeanor had softened into unease. "Monsieur Carver, you were in the library, alone, yet Mademoiselle Dale found letters there.
Noticed nothing. Miss Clara Wentworth, her hands trembling, spoke next. "I was in my room, as I said. I saw Sylvia in the hall earlier, with a letter. But I didn't go near the conservatory, I swear it." Poirot's gaze softened, but only slightly. "Mademoiselle, your pearl was found near the body. You say it was lost, but when? And why did you not mention this letter until pressed?" Her tears spilled over. "I was afraid. Sylvia said it was dangerous. I didn't want to get involved. Mr. Lionel Gray, his theatrical flair subdued, shifted uncomfortably. "I was on the grounds, as I said. I tried to speak with Sylvia, but she dismissed me. I didn't see any letter, and I didn't go into the conservatory." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "And the mud from the rose garden, monsieur? Your shoes were clean, yet a footprint suggests someone was there. Explain this." Gray's voice rose. "I cleaned my shoes. I told you. I'm particular. I wasn't in the conservatory." Mrs. Beatrice Lyle, her fan clutched tightly, spoke with venom. "I was in my room, preparing for bed. I had no reason to kill Sylvia, despite her threats. She was a scheming girl, nothing more." Poirot's voice was soft, but piercing. "And your fan, madame, seen in the hall near the conservatory. How did it come to be there?" Mrs. Lyle's face flushed. "The maid lied. I never left my room. Mr. Victor Marwood, his joviality gone, spoke last. Billiard room, as I said. Sylvia threatened me, yes, but I didn't take her seriously. I didn't kill her." Poirot stepped forward, his voice rising slightly. "Enough! The lies, they are crumbling. I have searched the library, and I have found a hidden compartment in an old desk, a place where letters were kept. One remains, torn, but legible. It speaks of a scandal, a betrayal, and a name. Shall I read it aloud?" The room froze, every eye on Poirot. Hastings saw the panic flicker across their faces. Lady Eleanor's clenched hands, Carver's sudden stillness, Wentworth's stifled sob, Gray's ashen pallor, Lyle's rigid posture, Marwood's sweating brow. Poirot held no paper. But the bluff was masterful, and it struck a nerve. Mrs. Lyle stood, her voice shaking. "You can't have it! I burned it years ago! Sylvia lied. She had nothing." Her outburst silenced the room, and she sank back, realizing her mistake. Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Merci, Madame Lyle."
Worked. Mrs. Lyle's fear is real, but she is not alone in her guilt. The library, it holds the final piece. We must search it now, before the killer acts again. Hastings nodded, his heart pounding. The trap had sprung, and the truth was within reach. But the shadows of Thornfield Grange still concealed a killer, and Poirot's game was far from over. Chapter 10. The Reveal. The library of Thornfield Grange, with its towering shelves and musty scent of old leather, seemed to pulse with secrets as Hercule Poirot stepped inside. Captain Arthur Hastings at his side. The late afternoon light slanted through the mullioned windows, casting intricate shadows across the polished floor. The guests remained confined to the drawing room under Inspector Grayson's watchful eye, their nerves frayed by Poirot's earlier trap. Mrs. Beatrice Lyle's outburst had cracked the facade of lies, but Poirot knew the true killer still lurked among them, and the final piece of the puzzle lay hidden in this room. Poirot's green eyes scanned the library with methodical precision. "Hastings," he said softly, "the letters Mademoiselle Dale found, they are the heart of this crime. She uncovered secrets that threatened ruin, and one of those secrets drove a hand to murder. We must find the hidden compartment I spoke of, though I confess, my bluff in the drawing room was not entirely truthful. I have yet to locate it." Hastings, startled, raised an eyebrow. "A bluff, Poirot. You had Mrs. Lyle in a panic." Poirot's mustache twitched with a faint smile. "Précisément, mon ami. The guilty, they betray themselves under pressure. Madame Lyle's fear confirms her secret,
but I do not believe she wielded the letter opener. The killer is cleverer, more controlled. Now, assist me." They moved to an antique desk in the corner, its dark wood carved with intricate vines. Poirot's gloved fingers traced the edges, pressing gently until a soft click sounded. A hidden panel sprang open, revealing a small compartment. Inside lay a single envelope, yellowed with age, its seal broken. Poirot opened it carefully, extracting a letter written in a precise feminine hand. He read silently, his eyes narrowing, then handed it to Hastings. The letter, dated 5 years prior, was from Lady Eleanor's late husband, Lord Ashbourne, to a solicitor. It detailed a financial arrangement to suppress a scandal involving a play by Mrs. Lyle, which exposed an affair between Lord Ashbourne and a young actress, Sylvia Dale's mother. The letter also mentioned payments to silence a critic, Dr. Julian Carver, and a publisher, Victor Marwood, who had profited from the affair's fallout. A final line referenced a poet, Lionel Gray.
Mademoiselle Dale. She was not merely an actress, but the daughter of a woman wronged. She came to Thornfield Grange seeking justice, or perhaps leverage, but one of them feared her knowledge too much. They returned to the drawing-room, where the guests sat in tense silence. Poirot held the letter aloft, his voice ringing with authority. "Mesdames et messieurs, the truth is revealed. This letter, hidden in the library, tells a story of betrayal, one that Mademoiselle Sylvia Dale uncovered. It speaks of a scandal suppressed by Lord Ashbourne, involving Madame Lyle's play, Monsieur Carver's silence, Monsieur Marwood's profits, and Monsieur Gray's stolen verses. But only one of you killed to protect this secret." He turned to Lady Eleanor, whose face was ashen. "Madame, you knew of this letter, did you not? It was written by your husband." Lady Eleanor's hands trembled, but she nodded. I suspected Sylvia found something. She came to me after dinner, demanding to know about her mother. I told her to leave the past alone, but she wouldn't listen." Poirot's gaze shifted to Dr. Carver. "Monsieur Carver, your career was built on silence, paid for by Lord Ashbourne. Sylvia's threat to expose you would have ended it." Carver's eyes flashed. "I didn't kill her. I'd have weathered any scandal. She was nothing to me." Poirot moved to Mr. Marwood. "Monsieur Marwood, your bribes enriched you, but exposure would ruin your empire. You quarreled with Sylvia, oui?" Marwood's face reddened. "I told you, I laughed her off. I didn't need to kill her." Poirot turned to Mr. Gray. "And you, Monsieur Gray, your fame rests on stolen words. Sylvia's accusation of plagiarism struck at your core." Gray's hands shook. "She mocked me, but I didn't touch her. I'm no murderer." Finally, Poirot faced Mrs. Lyle, whose fan lay forgotten in her lap. "Madame Lyle, your play exposed a truth you buried. Sylvia's threat to revive it drove you to despair, yet you claim innocence." Mrs. Lyle's voice was a whisper. "I hated her, but I didn't kill her." Poirot stepped back, his voice rising. The letter opener, from Lady Eleanor's study, was driven with precision. The glass with sedative ensured no struggle. The pearl, torn from Mademoiselle Wentworth's bracelet, was placed to mislead. The footprint in the rose garden, it was not Monsieur Gray's, but a deliberate clue to point elsewhere. The killer is clever, but they forgot one thing: the quill. He paused, letting the word hang. The quill in Lady Eleanor's study, used to write "betrayed," was not hers. It belongs to the library, where only one person was that evening: Dr. Julian Carver. Carver shot to his feet. "This is outrageous. I was reading, not writing." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Lured her to the conservatory and stabbed her with the letter opener you took from the study. The pearl you planted to implicate Mademoiselle Wentworth. The footprint you made in the rose garden to cast suspicion on Monsieur Gray. You, A critic who thrives on control could not bear the loss of it. Carver's face twisted, his composure shattering. You have no proof. It's all conjecture. Poirot produced the glass, still wrapped in his handkerchief. This residue, it will show chloral hydrate, which you, as a man of means, could procure. And the letter. It bears your fingerprints, not Sylvia's. You touched it when you realized she had it. Carver lunged forward, but Grayson seized him, cuffs snapping shut. You're done, Carver, the inspector growled. As Carver was led away, the room exhaled, the tension breaking. Poirot turned to Hastings, his voice soft. The little grey cells, Hastings. They see what the heart conceals. The guests sat in stunned silence. The truth laid bare. Thornfield Grange, once a haven of secrets, was cleansed by Poirot's relentless logic. Chapter 11. The Reflection. The drawing-room of Thornfield Grange, bathed in the soft glow of the late afternoon sun, seemed to sigh with relief as the truth of Miss Sylvia Dale's murder was laid bare. Dr. Julian Carver, his icy facade shattered, had been led away in handcuffs by Inspector Grayson, his protests fading into the corridors of the estate. The remaining guests, Lady Eleanor Ashbourne, Miss Clara Wentworth, Mr. Lionel Gray, Mrs. Beatrice Lyle, and Mr. Victor Marwood, sat in stunned silence, their faces a mixture of shock, guilt, and weary gratitude. Captain Arthur Hastings, standing near the window, felt the weight of the ordeal lift, though the air still carried the residue of betrayal and loss. Hercule Poirot, his small figure poised with quiet dignity, surveyed the room, his green eyes reflecting a mind still turning over the intricacies of human nature. Inspector Grayson, wiping his brow, turned to Poirot. Well, Mr. Poirot, you've done it again. I'll admit I thought Marwood was our man, but you saw through the lot. That letter, the quill, the glass, neat work, I'll give you that. Poirot inclined his head, his moustache twitching faintly. Merci, Inspector. But it is not the clues alone that reveal the truth. It is the understanding of the human heart, its passions, its fears, its capacity for deception. Dr. Carver, he was a man of control, but control, it crumbles when the fear of exposure becomes too great. Hastings, ever the loyal chronicler, stepped closer. Poirot, how did you know it was Carver? The pearl, the footprint.
Right, betrayed. Hoping to suggest Mademoiselle Dale named her killer. The sedative in the glass, it ensured her compliance, and the pearl, torn from Mademoiselle Wentworth's bracelet, was a clumsy attempt to shift blame. The footprint in the rose garden, it was too deliberate, made to point to Monsieur Gray. Carver, he thought himself cleverer than Hercule Poirot. But no one can outwit the little grey cells. Lady Eleanor, her composure regained, spoke softly. Mr. Poirot, I should have told you about the letter. I knew my husband's papers were in the library, but I never imagined Sylvia would find them. Her mother's affair, it was a painful chapter, one I thought buried. Poirot's gaze softened. Madame, the past, it has a way of resurfacing. Mademoiselle Dale sought justice, or perhaps revenge, for her mother. She was unwise to use the letter as leverage, but her death, it is a tragedy, not a justification. Miss Wentworth, her tears dried, clutched her bracelet, now repaired with a new pearl. I thought it might have been my fault, leaving my bracelet where it could be taken. I'm so sorry. Poirot shook his head. Mademoiselle, you are not to blame. The killer used your pearl to deceive, but the truth, it cannot be hidden forever. Mr. Gray, his theatrical flair muted, spoke hesitantly. I was a fool, letting her taunts get to me. My poetry, it's mine now, whatever the past. I didn't kill her, but I feel the shame of my silence. Mrs. Lyle,
Her fan still in her lap, looked away, her voice low. I hated her for dredging up my past, but I see now she was desperate. I wish I'd spoken to her, not turned away. Mr. Marwood, his joviality a distant memory, nodded grimly. She pushed too hard, but I should have listened. We all have our sins, don't we? Poirot stepped forward, addressing them all. Oui, mes amis. We all carry secrets, but it is how we face them that defines us. Mademoiselle Dale, she sought to expose the truth, but she chose a dangerous path. Dr. Carver, he chose murder to protect his pride. The lesson, it is this: the truth. It will always find a way, and it is better to face it than to hide behind lies. He paused, his voice softening. The human heart, it is complex, capable of great love and great cruelty. I, Hercule Poirot, seek only to understand it, to bring order to its chaos. This case, it is closed, but the heart, it continues to beat with its mysteries. As the guests murmured their thanks, Poirot turned to Hastings. Come, mon ami. The train to London awaits, and I have a craving for a simple tisane, far from the intrigues of Thornfield Grange. They stepped into the hall, where the late afternoon light painted the walls in gold. Hastings glanced back at the drawing. The layers of deceit, seeing the worst in people. Poirot smiled faintly, adjusting his hat. Never, Hastings. For in every crime there is also humanity. Flawed, yes, but capable of redemption. The little gray cells, they do not tire of seeking the truth, for it is the truth that sets us free. As they stepped out into the crisp October air, the gravel crunching underfoot, Thornfield Grange stood silent behind them, its secrets laid bare. Poirot, with his methodical brilliance, had once again brought light to the darkness, and Hastings, ever his faithful companion, felt a quiet pride in the man who saw what others could not. Chapter 12. The Unseen Motive. The twilight shadows lengthened across the manicured lawns of Thornfield Grange, the estate settling into an uneasy calm as the truth of Miss Sylvia Dale's murder was laid bare. Dr. Julian Carver's arrest had brought a semblance of closure, yet Captain Arthur Hastings sensed an undercurrent of disquiet lingering among the guests. The drawing-room, where they had gathered so often, now felt like a stage after the final act, its players unsure of their roles. Hercule Poirot, however, stood with his usual composure, his green eyes gleaming with the restless curiosity that Hastings knew signaled unfinished business. Poirot addressed the group, his voice precise and measured. Mesdames et messieurs, the case of Mademoiselle Dale's murder appears resolved. Dr. Carver, he sought to protect his reputation by silencing her, using the letter opener, the sedative, and the planted clues. Yet I, Hercule Poirot, am not entirely satisfied. There is a motive unseen that whispers in the shadows of this affair. We must explore it before we depart. Inspector Grayson, packing his notebook, frowned. Not satisfied, Poirot? We've got the man, the weapon, the motive. What's left to poke at? Poirot's mustache twitched. The heart, Inspector. It is never so simple. The letter we found, it exposed secrets, oui, but it did not tell the whole story. Why did Mademoiselle Dale come to Thornfield Grange? Was it only to unearth old scandals, or was there a deeper purpose? Hastings, catching the glint in Poirot's eye, leaned closer. You think there's more, Poirot? Something beyond Carver's fear of exposure? Poirot nodded slightly. Précisément, mon ami. The letter spoke of Lord Ashburn's dealings, but it did not mention Mademoiselle Dale's mother by name. Why was Sylvia so certain of her mother's connection to this scandal? And why did she choose this weekend to act? Poirot turned to Lady Eleanor, whose sapphire ring glinted as she clasped her hands. Madame, you said Mademoiselle Dale Mother. I told her I knew of no such letter, but she was insistent.
almost frantic. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Frantic, you say? And did she mention any other proof, beyond the letter? Lady Eleanor hesitated, then shook her head. No, just the letter. I thought she was mistaken, grasping at rumours. Poirot paced slowly, his hands clasped behind his back. Curious. The letter we found does not name her mother, yet Sylvia was certain. Let us return to the library, Hastings. There is something we have overlooked. The two men made their way to the library, its shelves looming like silent witnesses. Poirot moved to the hidden compartment in the antique desk, now empty save for dust. He ran his fingers along the wood, then turned to a nearby bookshelf, his eyes scanning the spines. Hastings, the library. It is not merely a repository of books, but of secrets. Mademoiselle Dale found something more than the letter, something that gave her certainty. He paused at a row of leather-bound journals, their edges worn. Pulling one down, he opened it to reveal Lord Ashburn's handwriting, dated a decade earlier. The entries detailed estate matters, but one page, bookmarked with a faded ribbon, caught Poirot's attention. It read, "Met with ED today. She threatens to reveal all unless I provide for her child. I cannot risk Eleanor's heart. Payment arranged. But silence is not guaranteed." Hastings gasped. ED. Could that be Sylvia's mother? Elizabeth Dale? Poirot nodded. It is likely, Hastings. This journal, it was hidden in plain sight. Sylvia found it, perhaps by chance, and it fueled her quest. But why kill her for this? Carver's motive. It was strong, but there is a deeper thread. Returning to the drawing room, Poirot gathered the guests once more. Mes amis, a new piece of the puzzle emerges. A journal, written by Lord Ashburn, confirms a connection to Mademoiselle Dale's mother. It speaks of a child, Sylvia herself, and a payment to ensure silence. This, I believe, was the true spark of her mission here. But it raises a question. Who else knew of this journal? The guests exchanged wary glances. Mr. Victor Marwood, his face pale, spoke up. I knew Lord Ashburn had his secrets, but I never saw that journal. Sylvia mentioned her mother once, said she deserved better. I thought it was just talk. Mrs. Beatrice Lyle, her fan still, shook her head. I knew nothing of it. My play was about a scandal, yes, but I didn't connect it to Sylvia's mother. Mr. Lionel Gray, his voice soft, added, She taunted me about my poetry, but she never mentioned her mother. I swear it. Miss Clara Wentworth, her eyes red, whispered, She told me her mother was wronged, but I didn't know about a journal. She was so angry, so determined. Poirot's gaze settled on Lady Eleanor. Madam, you lived with Lord Ashburn.
I knew he kept journals, but I never read them. After his death, I couldn't bear to. If Sylvia found it, she must have been searching deliberately. Poirot stepped forward, his voice rising. The unseen motive, it is this. Sylvia Dale came not only to expose a scandal, but to claim her birthright. The journal suggests she was Lord Ashburn's daughter, a secret that would shame this house. Carver killed to protect his reputation, but someone else feared the truth of her lineage. That fear, it drove the plan to silence her. He paused, watching the guests. The journal, it is safe now, and Carver's guilt is clear. But I warn you, mes amis, the past does not sleep. It speaks, and it demands reckoning. As the guests sat in stunned silence, Poirot turned to Hastings. Mon ami, the case is closed, but the heart of Thornfield Grange, it beats with secrets still. We shall leave them to their peace, such as it is. Hastings nodded, feeling the weight of the unseen motive, a daughter's quest, a father's shame, and a murder born of fear. Poirot's little gray cells had triumphed, but the shadows of Thornfield Grange lingered, whispering of truths yet to be faced. The evening shadows stretched long across the grounds of Thornfield Grange.
cloaking the estate in a somber hush as the weight of recent revelations settled over its inhabitants. The arrest of Dr. Julian Carver had resolved the murder of Miss Sylvia Dale, yet Hercule Poirot's insistence on an unseen motive had stirred a restless unease among the guests. Captain Arthur Hastings, standing in the library where the critical journal had been found, felt a nagging sense that the case, though closed, held one final secret. Poirot, his small figure silhouetted against the fading light, pored over the journal once more, his green eyes sharp with the relentless curiosity that defined him. "Hastings," Poirot said, his voice low and deliberate, "the journal, it has told us much, but it conceals as well as it reveals. Mademoiselle Dale was Lord Ashbourne's daughter, a truth that threatened the honor of this house. Yet I wonder, why now? Why did she choose this weekend, this gathering, to unearth the past?" Hastings frowned, his mind turning over the question. Perhaps it was the literary retreat, Poirot. She knew the guests. Writers, critics, publishers had ties to her mother's scandal. It was her chance to confront them all. Poirot's mustache twitched. "Précisément, mon ami, but there is more. The journal speaks of a payment to silence her mother, Elizabeth Dale. Yet, Sylvia, she was not seeking money."
Knows it'll not. They found Lady Eleanor in her study, her emerald gown replaced by a somber black dress, her sapphire ring glinting as she clasped her hands. The room was lit by a single lamp, casting her face in sharp relief. "Mr. Poirot," she said, her voice steady but weary, "you have brought justice to Sylvia. What more can there be?" Poirot's gaze was gentle but unrelenting. "Madame, the journal confirms Mademoiselle Dale was your husband's daughter. Did you know of her true parentage before she arrived?" Lady Eleanor's eyes dropped to her hands. "I suspected. My husband was not a faithful man, though I loved him. Years ago I heard rumors of an actress, Elizabeth Dale, and a child. When Sylvia was invited, I wondered, but I hoped it was coincidence. She never spoke of it directly until that night, when she confronted me about her mother." Poirot leaned forward. "And what did you say, madame, when she asked about her mother?" Lady Eleanor's voice trembled. "I told her the past was buried, that stirring it would bring only pain. She was angry, said she deserved to know her father's name, to claim her place. I begged her to leave it be, but she refused." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "And did you tell anyone of this conversation?" She shook her head. "No one. I was ashamed, Mr. Poirot. To admit my husband's betrayal, even to myself, was unbearable." Poirot stepped back, his hands clasped behind him. "Merci, madame. Your honesty, it is painful but necessary. There is one final thread to unravel." He led Hastings back to the drawing room, where the remaining guests, Miss Clara Wentworth, Mr. Lionel Grey, Mrs. Beatrice Lyle, and Mr. Victor Marwood, sat in uneasy silence, their faces reflecting the toll of the past days. Inspector Grayson, preparing to depart, looked up as Poirot entered. "Poirot, we're done here. Carver's confessed to the sedative and the letter opener. Case closed." Poirot raised a hand. "Un moment, Inspector. Dr. Carver killed to protect his reputation, oui. But there is a hidden truth, one that drove Sylvia to this house. She was not only seeking justice for her mother, but recognition as Lord Ashbourne's heir. This, I believe, was known to another, someone who feared the consequences of her claim.
He turned to Mr. Victor Marwood, whose face had gone pale. Monsieur Marwood, you were close to Lord Ashburn, we? You profited from his payments to silence scandals. Did you know of Sylvia's parentage? Marwood's hands clenched. His voice—
Marwood's eyes darted away. She said something about her rightful place, about taking what was hers. I thought she meant the role in the play, but maybe she meant more. Poirot nodded, turning to the group. Mes amis, the hidden truth is this. Sylvia Dale came to claim her heritage, a truth that would disrupt the legacy of Thornfield Grange. Dr. Carver killed her to protect his own secrets, but another may have known her intent and encouraged his fear. The journal, it was not found by chance. Someone ensured Sylvia saw it. He paused, his eyes on Lady Eleanor, who had followed them into the room. Madame, you did not tell anyone of Sylvia's confrontation, but your silence, it protected the killer's motive. Carver overheard your argument, perhaps, or found the journal himself. He acted to prevent Sylvia's claim from surfacing, for it would have exposed his own complicity in the scandal. Lady Eleanor's hand flew to her mouth, tears welling. I didn't know. I only wanted to protect my husband's memory. Poirot's voice softened. The heart, it seeks to shield those we love, but the truth, it demands to be heard. Sylvia's death, it is a tragedy born of secrets kept too long. As the guests absorbed the weight of his words, Poirot turned to Hastings. Mon ami, the case is truly closed now. The hidden truth, it is not a second killer, but a motive unspoken, a daughter's claim, a legacy threatened. We shall leave Thornfield Grange to heal its wounds. Hastings feeling the finality of the moment. The shadows of the estate seemed lighter, but the scars of betrayal would linger, a testament to Poirot's unrelenting pursuit of truth. The evening at Thornfield Grange draped the estate in a velvet darkness, broken only by the soft glow of lamps within its ancient walls. The guests, their spirits worn by the revelations of Miss Sylvia Dale's murder, gathered one last time in the drawing room, their faces reflecting a mix of relief and lingering unease. Dr. Julian Carver's confession had sealed his guilt, yet Hercule Poirot's insistence on a hidden motive, Sylvia's claim to the Ashbourne legacy, had left a faint tremor of doubt. Captain Arthur Hastings, standing by the fireplace, sensed that Poirot, with his unerring instinct for truth, was not yet ready to close the curtain on this drama. Poirot stood before the group, his small frame radiating a quiet intensity, his green eyes gleaming with purpose. Mesdames et messieurs, he said, his voice precise and resonant. The murder of Mademoiselle Sylvia Dale has been solved, and Dr. Carver will face justice. The journal, the letter opener, the sedative, it all points to Carver. What's this about another thread? Poirot's mustache twitched. Patience, Inspector. The crime, it is not only about the act, but the stage upon which it was set. Mademoiselle Dale, she was no ordinary guest. She came with purpose, guided by knowledge. Someone in this house, I believe, placed the journal where she would find it, knowing it would spark her quest and her doom. The guests exchanged wary glances, their exhaustion giving way to renewed tension. Lady Eleanor Ashbourne, her black dress absorbing the light, spoke softly. Mr. Poirot, I swear I didn't show Sylvia the journal. I knew of my husband's journals, but I never read them. If she found it, it was by chance. Poirot's gaze softened, but remained piercing. Madame, chance is a poor explanation for murder. The journal was bookmarked, its secrets marked for discovery. Someone intended for Mademoiselle Dale to find it. He turned to Miss Clara Wentworth,
whose hands trembled as she clutched her repaired bracelet. "Mademoiselle Wentworth, you spoke with Sylvia in the hall. Did she say how she found the journal?" Miss Wentworth's eyes widened, her voice barely audible. She said she was looking through the library, curious about the Ashbourne family. She mentioned finding a journal by accident tucked among the books. I thought nothing of it then. Poirot's head tilted. "By accident, you say? Yet the bookmark, it was deliberate, a ribbon, faded but precise. Someone placed it there." Mr. Lionel Gray, his poetic flair subdued, shifted uncomfortably. "I don't know about any journal. Sylvia taunted me, yes, but I never saw her with it." Mrs. Beatrice Lyle, her fan still in her lap, spoke with a trace of her old venom. "If someone set her up, it wasn't me. I wanted my past buried, not dragged into the light." Mr. Victor Marwood, his face drawn, shook his head. "I had no hand in this, Poirot. I suspected Sylvia's parentage, but I didn't point her to any journal." Poirot paced slowly, his hands clasped behind him. "Let us consider the stage. Mademoiselle Dale arrives at a literary retreat, among those tied to her mother's scandal. The journal, it is found too conveniently, sparking her confrontation with Lady Eleanor and her threats to others. Dr. Carver, he kills to protect his secrets. But who lit the fuse?" He paused, his eyes settling on Lady Eleanor. "Madame, you are the mistress of this house. The library, it is your domain. The journal, it was your husband's. Did you perhaps leave it where Sylvia could find it, hoping to resolve the past?" Lady Eleanor's hand flew to her throat, her voice trembling. "No, I would never. I wanted peace, not tragedy. If the journal was found, it was not by my hand." Poirot nodded, his gaze shifting to the group. "Then let us
Ashbourne family collection. But there is one who knew the library well, who had access to its secrets, someone who resented Sylvia's presence, her beauty, her ambition." He turned to Mrs. Lyle, whose face paled. "Madame Lyle, your play exposed a scandal tied to Lord Ashbourne. You feared Sylvia's threats, but did you also fear her claim to this house? Did you place the journal, knowing it would stir her to act, hoping another would silence her?" Mrs. Lyle's fan fell to the floor, her voice a whisper. I found the journal months ago, when I visited Eleanor. I recognized its contents, yes, but I hid it back in the shelf. I didn't place it for Sylvia. I wanted her gone, but not like this." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Yet did not destroy it, Mark, waiting for a flame. Your resentment, it set the stage. And Carver, he struck the match." The room fell silent, the weight of Poirot's words sinking in. Mrs. Lyle's shoulders sagged, her defiance crumbling. "I didn't mean for her to die," she murmured. "I only wanted her to leave us alone." Poirot stepped back, addressing the group. "The final thread, it is this. A crime requires not only a killer, but a catalyst. Madame Lyle, your actions were not murder, but they lit the path to it. The truth, it is now complete." He turned to Hastings, his voice low. "Mon ami, the heart of this case is not only Carver's guilt, but the shadows of intent. Thornfield Grange, it is a house of secrets, and we have laid them bare." As the guests sat in stunned silence, Hastings felt the case's finality, the hidden truth. A journal placed not by chance, but by resentment, had been uncovered, and Poirot's little grey cells had woven the last thread into the tapestry of justice. Chapter 15. The Departure. The morning mist clung to the rolling hills of Devon, shrouding Thornfield Grange in a veil of quiet melancholy, as the final chapter of Miss Sylvia Dale's murder drew to a close. The grand estate, its ivy-clad walls bearing silent witness to the secrets unravelled, seemed to exhale as the guests prepared to leave, their faces etched with the weight of truth. Dr. Julian Carver's confession had sealed his fate, and Mrs. Beatrice Lyle's unwitting role in setting the stage for the crime had cast a sombre light on the gathering. Hercule Poirot, his small figure immaculate in a tailored suit, stood in the entrance hall, his green eyes reflective as he prepared to depart. Captain Arthur Hastings, ever at his side, felt a mix of relief and solemnity,
his head, his moustache twitching faintly.
Merci, Inspector. The truth, it is like a buried seed. It will always find its way to the light. Madame Lyle, she did not wield the weapon, but her resentment sowed the chaos that led to Mademoiselle Dale's death. The little gray cells, they see not only the crime, but the heart that shapes it. Hastings, adjusting his hat, glanced at the guests gathering their belongings. Lady Eleanor Ashbourne, her black dress stark against her pale skin, stood by the staircase, her sapphire ring catching the light. Miss Clara Wentworth, her bracelet now fully repaired, clutched her suitcase, her eyes red but resolute. Mr. Lionel Gray, his poetic flamboyance subdued, carried a small valise, his gaze distant. Mrs. Lyle, her fan nowhere in sight, moved stiffly, as if bearing the weight of her confession. Mr. Victor Marwood, his joviality a distant memory, lingered by the door, his face lined with regret. "Poirot," Hastings said quietly, "it's a grim business, isn't it? Sylvia came seeking justice for her mother, perhaps her place as an Ashbourne, and it cost her life. Do you think the truth was worth it?" Poirot's eyes softened, but his voice remained firm. "Mon ami, the truth, it is always worth pursuing, though its cost is often great. Mademoiselle Dale, she was a daughter wronged, driven by a need to right the past. Her death, it is a tragedy, but it has freed others to face their own truths. Lady Eleanor, she knows now the full measure of her husband's secrets. Madame Lyle, she must live with her part in this sorrow. The heart, it learns through pain." Lady Eleanor approached, her voice low and steady. "Mr. Poirot, I cannot thank you enough. You've brought clarity to this darkness, though it pains me to know Sylvia was my husband's daughter. I wish I could have spoken with her, not turned her away." Poirot bowed slightly. "Madam, the past, it cannot be undone, but you may honor her memory by living with honesty. The Grange, it will heal, as will you." Miss Wentworth, hesitating, stepped forward. "Mr. Poirot, I was so afraid, thinking my pearl made me a suspect. Thank you for seeing the truth." Poirot smiled gently. "Mademoiselle, fear clouds the mind, but the truth, it sets us free. Your heart, it is innocent." Mr. Gray, his voice subdued, added, "I'll write again, Mr. Poirot, but not for fame. Sylvia's taunts, they showed me my own weaknesses. I owe her that." Mrs. Lyle, her eyes averted, spoke softly. "I never meant for this to happen. I'll carry it always, but I'll try to make amends." Mr. Marwood, lingering by the door, nodded grimly.
"The only path to peace. I, Hercule Poirot, bid you farewell, but I leave you with this. The truth, it is a mirror, and it reflects all." As the guests dispersed, their footsteps echoing in the hall, Poirot turned to Hastings. "Come, mon ami, the train to London awaits, and I long for the simplicity of a quiet tisane. The intrigues of Thornfield Grange, they are done." They stepped outside, the gravel crunching underfoot as the mist began to lift, revealing the rolling hills beyond. Hastings glanced back at the estate, its windows glinting like eyes that had seen too much. "Poirot," he said, "you always find the truth.
But does it ever weigh on you? The pain it uncovers. Poirot adjusted his hat, his smile faint but resolute. The weight, Hastings, is the price of order. The world, it is chaotic, but the little gray cells, they bring clarity. To see the truth, to right the wrong, it is my purpose, and I do not tire of it. As they walked toward the waiting car, the mist parted, and Thornfield Grange stood silent behind them, its secrets laid bare. Poirot, with his unyielding logic and compassion, had once again woven order from chaos, leaving Hastings to marvel at the man who saw the world not as it seemed, but as it truly was.